I might actually one time film what it looks like for me this end with how many windows I've got open and how many buttons I have to press. So, welcome to this week's Truth or Trivia Red Pill Trivia Quiz, where parental advisory, of course, explicit truth bombs coming up. Let's get into the questions for today's Truth or Trivia Red Pill Quiz. Let's rock and roll. Number 1. What is the base frequency of the Earth's Schumann resonance? What is the base frequency of the Earth's Schumann resonance? Is it A, 4.73 Hz? Is it B, 7.83 Hz? Is it C, 16.6 Hz? Or is it D, 60 Hz? 4.73 Hz, 7.83 Hz, 16.6 Hz, or 60 Hz? Question number 2. According to the Georgia Guidestones, the population of humanity should be maintained at how many? According to the Georgia Guidestones, the population of humanity, the global population this is, should be maintained at how many? A, 500 million. B, 750 million. C, 2 billion. Or D, 5 billion. And let's face it, even 5 billion, you're still talking about losing nearly 3 billion people, innit, to get down to 5 billion. So according to the Georgia Guidestones, population should be kept at what? And this is apparently to keep it in harmony with Earth's resources. So A, 500 million, B, 750 million, C, 2 billion, or D, 5 billion. Mike, wait until the end, because you'll just be telling everybody else what the answers are as you go. You wait until the end and put one string in of 7 letters in a row. Unless you just accidentally pressed return without meaning to. Number 3. What is the smallest country in the world? What's the smallest country in the world? Is it A, Malta, B, Monaco, C, Switzerland, or D, Vatican City? Is it A, Malta, B, Monaco, C, Switzerland, or D, Vatican City? Question number 4. We're more than halfway there. More than halfway there. Number 4. What year was the first animal, Dolly the sheep, successfully cloned? I say successfully. That's a subjective word. A, 1994. B, 1996. C, 1998. Or was it D, 2002? Dolly the sheep. When was she cloned? Was it a she? Must have been. 1994, 1996, 1998, or 2002. We are steaming through question number 5. The Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect refers to what phenomenon? A, phantom limb syndrome thing. B, black and white vision. C, reality shift. Or D, premonition. The Mandela Effect. What does it refer to? Is it phantom limb syndrome? Is it black and white vision? A feeling of a reality shift? Or is it premonitions? Predicting the future and stuff. Penultimate question number 6. Penultimate question number 6. What wide-eyed animal is the only known venomous primate? Wide-eyed animal is the only known venomous primate. Is it A, a slow loris, B, an eye, C, a lemur, or is it a bush baby? D. A, slow loris, B, eye, C, lemur, or D, bush baby? Don't forget it's the last question, so you're going to be ready to put your answers in as soon as you see this last one. So here we go. Get ready. Number 7. Of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, what does the black horse represent? Of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, what does the black horse represent? Is it A, peace? Is it B, war? Is it C, death? Or is it D, famine? Peace, war, death, or famine. And that, my absolute lovelies, brings us to the end of our Truth or Trivia Red Pill quiz. Right. So let's see how well you did and see how good you think you are. So I'll see, I had a load of links that I was going to have set up actually for other stuff I was going to show you to do with the answers. But anyway, I'm sure we'll talk through some stuff. So base frequency, 7.83 Hertz. What's the Schumann resonance, Andy? The Schumann resonance, for those that don't know, is the natural frequency. It's like Earth's heartbeat. It's actually more based on the electromagnetic elements of it rather than an actual whoomp, 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 whoomp. It's more of a resonant oscillation of a magnetic field. Yeah. So imagine like a spinning motor or a spinning magnet, right? It creates its own frequency, and the idea being is that the frequency matches certain brainwave patterns of the human brain. And so when it becomes out of alignment, then it can cause issues with things like sleep and focus and concentration and mood, you know, what kind of mood you're in. And so there's a few people who actually follow the Schumann resonance on like a daily, weekly basis, because it does fluctuate. 7.83 hertz is the base range. That's like the, you know, like 37 point whatever degrees centigrade body temperature base rate, right? It can go above and below that. So yeah, it's worth following that because it does seem to have quite an influence. There's a lot of studies been done into it. It's not nothing. It is an actual thing, right? So number 2, we had according to the Georgia Guidestones, and of course, if you don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, it's a massive element of, what would you call it? It's not really controversy. It's just the fact that, or controversy, depending on where you're from. But it's basically like the 10 Commandments rewritten for how the elites see the world. And so a lot of suspicion is like who put them there, who paid for them, you know, all this other stuff, right? But it's basically Guidestones, like massive tombstones, which have got engraved, you know, basically keep the world under 500 million is what they reckon. That's their plan. I mean, a lot of the Georgia Guidestones sort of commandments is what I'm going to call them, because that's how they come across. Yeah, but it's like a Mother Earth commandments. Yeah, is how you describe it. But it's just because of who funded it or who's suspected to have funded it. It's almost like an elite type of a thing, like globalist elite view of how they would like the world to be. So bear in mind, with about 7.8, 7.9 by next year, billion people, billion, right? 7.9 billion people on the planet, right? You would have to basically get rid of 7.4 billion of the 7.9 billion to end up with the 500 million that they want to be rocking about with. So, and you know what? I'll tell you this quickly, some free information. Elon Musk, funnily enough, he did an interview where he talked about the crisis, the population crisis. It's actually the opposite, right? If you look at reproductive rates of the human on planet Earth, right, it should be about 2.4, right? So 2.4, each individual creates 2.4 children, right? And the idea of that being, obviously you need 2 children to replace the mother and the father, and then you need something left over to allow for childbirth deaths or sort of midlife deaths or something like that, you know, illnesses, and you know, they're not making it to adulthood. So about 2.4 is about where you want to be just to maintain the population, right? But when you look at Western societies, and again, if I'd actually planned on telling you any of this, then I would have had a load of maps prepared. What I can show you is quite fascinating. I call it not fascinating, I call it worrying. Still hadn't even shut down all the SHTF news windows, so I'm doing that now while I'm talking to you. But basically what's going on is that when you look at the Western countries, particularly European countries, like in the UK, I think for native white British, sort of whatever you want to call it, people in England, they're rocking at about a 1.8 reproductive rate, right? So it means that they're not actually reproducing themselves. The population is declining. Right, and in Germany and places like that, it's the same. It's like 1.7 in places, 1.6. Right now, there was something that I saw many years ago before it was a thing. Right now, it's a thing. They probably don't want to talk about this, and I don't want anyone to know, but I'm going to tell you it anyway. When a population reproductive rate, particularly with humans, because it's different for each species, obviously, but for humans, when it drops below about 1.8, you're actually in danger of a cascade runaway effect where you'll lose that species forever. Right? Think pandas. They got the same problem, right? The pandas weren't reproducing at least a 2 point whatever ratio. And so it caused a problem with the population. It is in an ever dwindling decline. Unlike polar bears, which is another red pill, is that polar bears have got the biggest population than they've had for 50 years. So anyone telling you that polar bears are dying out because of you know what, absolutely hasn't got a fucking clue. But anyway, panda bears of different kettle of fish. Yeah. But if you actually look at populations in the West, you're talking none of them are even close to being enough to maintain itself. And that might not seem like a problem because people say, oh, you know, resources and space and housing and sewage and electric and water supply they're all finite resources, right? And I get that and I agree with that, right? But I think the reality of it is when you see the condensed population of the planet can fit into New York State, or is it New York City, Manhattan? Is it Manhattan Island? Something crazy like that, right? If you give each person 1 meter squared, you'd be surprised how small a space that takes up, right? And don't forget, land itself only takes up about 40% of the surface of the planet, wherever you think that is, whether it's flat or globe or oblate spheroid or whatever, right? But the point being is that the land mass only makes up a small portion of the surface area in total. And within that smaller part of area, just in one small state of a country, you can fit the entire global population. So it's not as much. The problem isn't the population as a total. The problem is the population density. Yeah, it's where the populations drive into the city. That's where it caused the problem, because you're talking about it being an unnatural supply mechanism. Yeah, when people are scattered around the land and they've got their own little villages and their own little plots of land and their own, you know, like cattle and their own crops and things, right? You don't notice it as there isn't a supply issue, is there? Because everyone's just growing their own stuff and eating it as they go and storing it as they go, just like they used to. The difference is that when you're living in cities and in the desert, right, like places like you know, Nevada and that, it's a complete fake life because everything has to be brought in. Nothing's grown locally, nothing's supplied locally, everything is brought into that city. That's where resources become a problem. Yeah. So, you know, sorry, Kitty. So basically we're actually entering a population crisis. So they might actually get their 500 million that they're aiming for, right? So number 3, yeah, I do apologize. Thank you, Kitty, for bringing me back to planet Earth. What is the smallest country in the world? And of course, those that know will know. Vatican City. That's like their own country. And the benefit of that is it means that they can give out diplomatic immunity passports and stuff, and they can have their own currency, they can have their own laws, they can have their own things that they consider to be legal in their country and stuff like this. It's basically a bit of a scam. But it's not. But yeah, so smallest country, you know, Vatican City. Number 4, what year was the first animal, Dolly the sheep, successfully cloned? What do you reckon? 96. Now, the reason I put this one in there is because I thought it was important to remind people just how long ago we were fucking around with stuff like this, right? And I used to joke around with people back in about 2015-ish, I think it was. No, we weren't even back in England then, so it would have been like before 2011 or something. And I used to joke with people then saying, you know, like back in the day where Dolly was cloned and that, and then about a year after that, there was some sort of like a global agreement reached about the restriction on what was ethical to clone or not, and to say that cloning humans wasn't something that they had agreed to do. Yeah, a little bit like a non-proliferation agreement, yeah? Like nuclear stuff, right? They have like non-proliferation agreements. They did a similar thing to Dolly, the sheep, like with cloning, to say, we agree not to clone humans. And you know what? A year later, China said, well, you know, you can carry on as you are. We're actually not got a problem carrying on with our research on cloning humans. And that was in about 1990, about a year after this. So I used to joke around with people even 10 years ago saying, do you know what? It's funny, innit, how they started fucking around with cloning humans, Chinese and stuff. I wonder how they're getting on with that right now. And people think back and you think, yeah, that's enough for that to be a walking, talking, adult fighting age soldier, adult, let me say. What would that be, 25? Yeah? So if they were messing around cloning sheep in 1996, believe you me, the military would have been fucking around cloning people at least 10 years before that. But let's even just assume they got it figured out with humans successfully or reliably enough at 1996 or even 2000. You're still talking like a 20-year-old rocking around the streets. Not the streets, but you know what I mean. The underground, the deep underground military base. Dumb. Yeah? That's probably where they're walking around. On floor minus 54 or something like that, right? Super deep underground is where they'll have them. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it? So I thought I'd throw that one in there because it's more important to remind people that just how long ago they were dicking around with this stuff to ask yourself, where do you think they're at now? Yeah, 25 years later. So, the Mandela Effect. Always a good one. I'm sure you've seen this talked about and things. And for those who didn't know what it was, it's a good opportunity to figure that out now. But basically refers to reality shift. Or false memories is another way of describing it. But I use the term reality shift because it's kind of more sums up really what it is. Because a lot of the theories you see back in the day was stuff like when CERN, the Hadron Collider, deep underground collider thing, where they're messing around with the Higgs boson and stuff like that, yeah? Smashing, I think it's protons into each other at vast speeds, like 0.9 something, the times the speed of light or something, right? And they smash them together and they try and create little wormholes. And, you know, they basically said that they could open up parallel universes. And I think the Mandela Effect refers to where people have a different memory of what things used to be back in the day. The Bernstein Bears is a good example about how that was spelt. Is it the Bernstein or is it the Bernstein Bears? And lots of people remember it as being something that now it seems it's not. There's a lot of cartoon characters that used to have different identifying features that now just don't seem to appear to be there. And so there's just like, it's like, you know, and things like Mandela, I think the name I should have looked this up before, but this wasn't the point of the question. It was just, you know, what the Mandela Effect is. But I think it's based on the fact that people had a different memory of Nelson Mandela, that he had died. Yeah. It started with people thinking, hold on a minute, Mandela's coming out of prison. I'm pretty sure he died or something like that, right? And then he came out of prison and people were like, that doesn't make sense. That's not how I remember it. So, yeah. And so that was where it started. And then there was all these other things that people started noticing that just didn't add up, didn't match up to their memory of what that thing used to be in their childhood. And it was almost like there'd been a timeline shift. Like we'd been shifted into some parallel reality, right? Like the Matrix, but not, you know? And in this timeline, in this parallel universe, you know, the idea of parallel universes is that there's an infinite number of realities that are happening at the same time, yeah? In a quantum level. It's difficult to explain this without getting too complicated, but it's basically like having loads of different outcomes of all the different possible outcomes of every increment of time going forward. So for example, I've chosen to talk about this now, right? And go into a bit more detail about the Mandela Effect and things like parallel universes. Now, I might not have chosen to go into that. There's another parallel universe running alongside me right now where I chose not to go into that, and I've already gone on to question 6, like probably Kitty wants me to do, right? So, and all of the other options in between that I could have possibly done. You know, I could have knocked the microphone then, but I didn't, right? For example. And so then in the other parallel universe, I would have actually knocked that microphone and there would have been a whole cascade of events that followed that. So that's the idea of a parallel universe. It's just this happening in such an infinitesimal scale that is just that there's an infinite number of realities. And the point being is the thought was that perhaps by turning on CERN, with their prediction of making wormholes and all this other shit, maybe it shifted us into some alternate reality, you know, one of those other parallel universes. And that is exactly, funnily enough, what CERN claims that they can be able to do with the technology, is to literally create wormholes and enter new parallel universes. And this is like, what is it, 28 countries are involved in CERN, and you think, well, they're not wasting their time. They're not just giving these people money for nothing, right? There's obviously something in it. There's obviously something there, right? So that was question 5. Number 6. It's going to be a long show tonight, isn't it? But this is all about truth bombs, isn't it? So let's get them in there. As they come to mind, I'm just going to splurge them out, right? So, yeah, butterfly effect, Carolyn Rose. Thank you. Great one. Yeah, same thing, right? Butterfly effect. You know, ripples on the thing. A butterfly, if for people who don't know the butterfly effect, again, I like to try and help everyone to understand those that don't, right? That's the point of Truth or Trivia. Those that know will know, and those that don't know will learn. So here we go. Butterfly effect, essentially the flapping of a butterfly's wings theoretically has an effect of an outcome in the future by the fact that the wind coming off the butterfly's wings will affect the ocean in a small way, or the river below it, with the way that the water will react to the air coming off the wings, yeah, that will ripple the water, and when that water gets on shore, it will make a different ripple on a stone that will make the stone, you see? Butterfly effect. So there you go. Slow loris, number 6. Wide-eyed animals, the only known venomous primer. So if you come across a slow loris, don't mess with it. And I'll tell you what as well is unique about it, another little free fact, is the slow loris is one of the only animals as well where they use the venom against their own species. Yeah? So that's interesting, isn't it? Like, a lot of species don't use their venom against their own species. It's only against, a predator that they'll use their venom. So yeah, slow loris, don't want to be messing. Don't be messing. And then our ultimate question. Oh, I've just noticed Bambi's secret in the house, and she's making reference to Danger Bob. So Danger Bob must be in the house. So everyone must take a knee for our VIPs in the house tonight. Thank you for being here with us. So yeah, that was that. So our last question. This has come up a lot. I've seen so many references to things like end times and revelations and apocalypse and the 7 seals and the trumpets and on all the rest of it, right? So I thought we have to have a question to do with that in there. So pedigree mongle in there with famine. Yes, absolutely, famine it was. 4 horsemen, apocalypse. What does a black horse represent? None of the 4 horses represent peace, by the way. I threw that in there as a So Kitty reckons she's got 6 out of 7. So now you've seen what all the answers are. This is how it should have looked. So I hope you enjoyed the questions and answers of Truth or Trivia. So let's reward. Oh, if we missed a super chat from Rebecca Smith, I think we did. So we have to pay her some homage. Pedigree Mongrel. So well done, Pedigree Mongrel. Very, very respectable award, yeah. To win the Truth or Trivia, Pedigree Mongrel, 7 out of 7. Perfect win. Well done. Very impressive. Very few people are able to show such awesomeness. So well done, Pedigree Mongrel. Very impressed indeed. And I will say, Milkfish, you were indeed the runner-up. Yeah? You were 7 out of 7 as well. Were you not? I think you must have been, mustn't you? Yes. So you were the runner-up. Well, absolutely, totally well done.